Mischievous house spirits hailing from the medieval ages, goblins take on dozens of forms across myth, folklore, and fiction. In the RPG and TTRPG space, we know them in a few ways. Whether they're aggressive and foul-tempered like the ones in Pathfinder and D&D, or they're mystic, psychotic weirdos like the Gloomspite Gits from Age of Sigmar, or even if they're gold-obsessed tinkerers like the Goblin Cartels from Warcraft. All of these depictions boil down to a few commonalities. They're small, troublesome, and erratic beings. The primeval energy that radiates from the world of Therenor has great effects on some of its inhabitants. The Giants, as we know, are the most well-known example of this. Similar adaptations have developed in some groups of Smallfolk, namely Therenor's unique races and the Elves, though the latter's changes are much more gradual in nature. But there is another group of Smallfolk who find themselves touched by the realm's ancient power. One whose high reproductive rate and short lifespan has led to a wide array of adaptations. The Goblins. Hello, I'm Crazy K, and welcome back to the world of Therenor. Among the first of the Smallfolk, goblin is a collective term used to describe the variety of unruly, resilient scavengers which thrive in every corner of the realm. Witty, feisty, and sometimes surprisingly bold for their size, they scrounge the forests, deserts, tundras, and cave systems for food to consume. Born with outlandishly high rates of metabolism and a strong instinctual need to hunt, goblins in Therenor's wilds are short-lived, rarely exceeding 20 years. They devote most of their lives to this search for sustenance, traveling nomads feasting on whatever they can to maintain the energy their bodies need to survive. Rarely alone, goblins congregate in packs of 10 or more. Working together, they hunt the land, ravenously exhausting small patches of its resources. After the last bone has been picked clean in the area, the pack disperses in search of new opportunities to satiate their hunger. Contrary to their scavenger-like way of life, goblins are intelligent beings whose adaptive nature and perseverance have ensured their survival through the realm's history. Some goblins have even been known to break from this nomadic lifestyle, their packs growing to sizes large enough to form a clan. A loosely structured hub of goblin activity, goblin clans send groups out in all directions, tasked with scavenging food to bring back home. Unlike packs, which exist for at most a few months before scattering, clans are permanent settlements, developing their own cultures, traditions, and relations with neighboring towns and cities. For example, the Longspurs, a clan of goblins just north of the swamps of Grunlog, have developed a fighting culture which arms their goblins with daggers affixed to their ankles. Lunging from tree cover, goblins dig these spur-like daggers into the backs of their enemies, latching on before beginning their assault. More experienced, higher-ranking goblins also sport tattoos on the backs of their bodies, a quick visual for other goblins to discern who they need to follow during a battle. The emergence of a clan also attracts hobgoblins and bugbears, whose commanding presence establishes a bit more order to the chaotic crowd. These are two other races I would like to go more in depth with in a different video, but for the time being, we'll continue to focus on goblins. Goblin kind has frequent altercations with other Smallfolk, usually over natural resources. Clans commonly send members to sneak their way into towns and cities, usually in search of food or trinkets, even going as far to raid villages for crops and livestock. Some goblins make the active choice to separate from their clans, in favor of a slower life in Smallfolk society. Though there are hurdles, many have enmeshed peacefully into these communities, becoming essential aspects of the towns and cities they thrive in. Many questions have arisen about the origins of goblins and their purpose in Therenor. Some believe the race rose from the soil, much like the giants before them, their ravenous appetites and range of forms blessings from the divine. Soltaugur, great spirit of the fertile hills, worshipped in times of hunger and harvest, and Galaskander, great spirit of the skies, worshipped by those seeking to flow and adapt to life's uncertainties as effortlessly as the wind, are likely influencers, though no one knows for sure. The destructive nature of goblins have also sparked fear over the creation of a dragon, though goblin activity is yet to be documented as the cause of an emergence. Stone giants have described many instances of goblins sweeping through their mountains, leaving small patches of forests in disarray, only for them to bloom back years later in greater abundance. In this way, they play a role very similar to the realm's dragons, just on a much smaller scale, constantly pruning the world, making room for nature to regrow stronger and more plentiful. In more recent years, goblins have encountered a new, sinister obstacle to overcome. Brock, the hill giant king, with his horde of ever-hungry hill giants, looks to expand his reach deep into the realm of the Smallfolk, and goblins are the perfect host. With his sinister hemomancy, he exploits their natural instincts, transforming them into creatures of unending hunger which follow his path of destruction devotedly. In his wake, many goblins across the realm have taken up arms, ready to stand with the rest of Smallfolk kind and defend their homes against his wrath. Therenor has 7 types of goblins, each highly adapted to survive the environments they find themselves in. By the end of this video, you will be able to play as a goblin from Therenor, and these subraces will be posted on D&D Beyond so you can use them in your home games. Any sort of feedback is absolutely appreciated, and you can provide it in the comments or in our Discord server. This is still a work in progress, so these will change over time, and I'm always looking for extra feedback where I can. To find our first goblin, we need to search the dense, muddy undergrowth of Therenor's largest swamp, Grunlog. While there is plenty food to be found here, early Smallfolk found it very difficult to wade through the endless, dank bogs. This was no problem for the goblins of the swamp, however, for they have adapted long muzzle-like snouts and digging claws to scrape through the thick mud for tasty scraps of food. Swamp goblins were incredibly crafty. Pulling from the materials around them, they were able to build crude traps and tools to catch frogs, bugs, and rodents. Though they hung out in groups, they preferred to trap alone, and they would build crude idols to scare other goblins away from their territory. If, for whatever reason, you're not terrified by their idols made from bundles of bones and sticks, swamp goblins would place a number of booby traps, hidden nests of stinging insects in containers filled with slippery oils, meant to deter any would-be trapper from intruding on their territory. Often, Smallfolk towns are included in the boundaries of these territorial disputes, leading to goblins entering and pilfering them for food and materials. Swamp towns would burn incense throughout the night, the pleasant aroma supposedly offensive to their sensitive noses. In larger numbers, swamp goblins may leave the bogs and enter the endless expanse in search of much larger prey. Dozens of goblins can excavate dirt and muck to create massive pit traps, spacious enough to contain even the largest of the plains creatures, such as bison or even hill giants. Swamp goblin packs occasionally dig into halfling villages, subterranean farming communities with an extensive network of underground chambers just beneath the hills of the Great Expanse, while they work. Suddenly, a session of trapping turns into a full-blown raid, making goblins a serious threat to these communities. To prevent this, halflings usually have a few residential swamp goblins that work in unison to mark the outskirts of their village, warding off intruders. Back in Grunlog, swamp goblins might also find a place for themselves in Smallfolk towns. They're excellent gatherers, and their keen noses have a wide array of uses. Some swamp goblins are tasked with finding rare medicinal herbs and alchemical ingredients for community magic users, while others might even help the militia to track down criminals on the run. If you're playing as a swamp goblin, your nose will give you the upper hand when it comes to tracking targets, and you'll have your sharp claws to fall back on in a pinch. But creating traps is your specialty. A number of times equal to your proficiency bonus a day, you can rig a space with a trap, unleashing stinging bugs, a pool of slippery grease, or a grisly idol to terrify your targets, bringing some of that much-needed goblin chaos to battle. High among the peaks of the icy tundras of Therenor, we find our next goblin clinging to the rocky faces of the world, grazing on sparse plant life and ravenously gobbling any tiny creatures or carcasses they happen across. Mountain goblins are much more solitary, reluctantly gathering in small packs for safety. Generally territorial, bickering amongst mountain goblins is common, and these spats routinely escalate into fights, where they settle their arguments through a series of fierce headbutts. Disputes among leaders about the actions of the clan are settled in a similar way, with extra care taken by other pack members to stamp out the fighting grounds. By making the terrain as uniform as possible, they can ensure neither goblin gets any unforeseen advantages. Boasting a dense, muscled neck, a broad frame, and an extremely thick skull roof, mountain goblins were built to withstand blunt force trauma from any source, whether it's other goblins, large predators, or even from falling off of mountains and cliffs. The sound of two mountain goblins fighting will echo for miles, the force of each powerful hit enough to snap young trees and splinter boulders. Frightening off elk and other prey animals, this alone makes them troublesome in mountain societies that rely on hunting. They will also defend themselves and their territory against any creature, even those magnitudes larger than they are. So if one or multiple mountain goblins settle themselves on a well-walked path, you're gonna have to find another way around. The power they pack is lethal, and a mountain goblin's headbutt is said to be able to knock out a beast the size of an owlbear in a single blow. Mountain goblins are surprisingly durable for their size, and their sturdiness and stubbornness are well known throughout the realm. It's said that if a couple spots a mountain goblin tumbling from a cliff, their relationship is stable and can shoulder any blow. Among the mountainous societies where these goblins are frequent, going goblin is a term used to describe someone who's acting rash and bullheaded, refusing to listen to reason and lashing out at others. Though they are stubborn, they're also fearless. So much so that children are told bedtime stories of a mountain goblin with a heart of gold, who protects the innocent from the terrors of the night. Some mountain goblins have left the harshness of the wilds to assimilate into Smallfolk society, where their unique sets of skills can be put to use. Logging camps might employ mountain goblins to quickly, albeit sloppily, clear forests, as well as demolish buildings. Mountain goblins also find work as guardsmen in cities, or defenders and guides for traveling groups through the mountains, their stubborn, fearless nature making them excellent protectors. As a mountain goblin, your dense frame allows you to ignore damage from falls, and your stubborn nature keeps you from fleeing a fight. Additionally, you can use your thick skull as a lethal weapon in combat. With a running start, this attack can even disorient and slow your enemy. Deep within the rocky crevices, moss-laden caverns, and damp underground tunnel systems of Therenor, goblins too have learned to survive here. Feasting on a variety of cave spiders, lizards, fish, and moss, cave goblins have acclimated nicely to the endless darkness of the subsurface world. Feeling safer dozens of feet above the cave floor, these meek goblins congregate in piles on the craggy walls, descending only to hunt for food. Massive eyes absorb what limited light there is below ground, and their large, flattened ears provide them with unparalleled hearing. They're capable of echolocation, a trick useful for seeing through thick clouds of spores. When comfortable, cave goblins are incredibly social, chattering away on the cavern walls to their dozens of packmates, holding multiple conversations at once, some with other clusters of cave goblins many miles away. Cave goblins interact frequently with dwarves, whose grand stone cities reside below the surface of the mountains. Separated into uniform districts, blocks of dwarvish miners are summoned to dig sites at a time, their homes unattended for days or weeks. Streets left unoccupied for too long are quickly commandeered by cave goblins, the walls and ceilings of these long corridors beneath the mountains the perfect nesting grounds for their packs. One quick way to disperse cave goblins is with a flash of bright light from a torch or a fire spell, though some cave goblins prove to be more curious than scared. Often these cave goblins are welcomed into dwarvish society, where they can contribute in mining operations. Through use of their echolocation, they can help dwarvish excavators locate hidden caverns behind thin sheets of rock, and their exceptional hearing notifies them of shifts in the walls, letting them predict cave-ins before it's too late. So intertwined have cave goblins become to dwarven life, most refuse to work unless there's a cave goblin on the premises. In dwarvish cities, their droppings make for excellent fertilizer, and are also used as a substitute for alchemical components requiring bat guano. Some wizards and spellcasters may even go out of their way to search for a cave goblin apprentice, not just for their ingredients, but their inquisitive nature makes them fantastic pupils. As a cave goblin, you'll have a climbing speed equal to your walking speed. Additionally, you'll have extended dark vision reaching out to 120 feet, and you can echolocate a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, allowing you to spot any hidden or ethereal creatures, objects, or traps in a 60-foot cone in front of you. Heading into the sands of Nalan Sando, we find our next goblins. Active at night and covered in dense, leathery plates, Dune Goblins use their strong, shovel-like forelimbs to burrow through the sand, staying hidden from predators while also scavenging for small lizards and bugs. During the day, these goblins will seek out abandoned towns buried deep in the dunes for shelter, keeping cool beneath the sands and staving off hunger by chewing on dried flesh and rotted wood found amongst the ruins. Due to their nocturnal nature, Dune Goblins have frequent spats with fire giant hatchlings, whose paths cross at dusk and dawn, as well as the Sand Elves, whose homes are picked apart during their nightly voyage to Ilderheim. Dune Goblins congregate in these buried ruins, hoarding what resources they can find and isolating themselves from thieving hands. The only times they aren't alone are during raids and when raising young, one or multiple infants clinging to their mother's undersides for the first few months of life, observing the daily routines of the desert before setting out to scavenge on their own. Many Dune Goblins worship Ignolin, Great Spirit of the Dunes, whose idols can be found in each ruin. Some even claim they see secret messages in the sand, placed there by the spirit to guide them to new shelter, which they come across with startling accuracy. Dune Goblins have frequent altercations with treasure hunters, whose camps are ambushed in the dead of night for rations. Their hardened backplates mitigating the assault of arrows and swords, they're persistent, returning numerous times to swipe unattended food like a pack of coyotes. Dune Goblin plating is light yet sturdy, a perfect natural armor collected and used by Sandalver on occasion. When Dune Goblins do enter Smallfolk society, they most easily find work as treasure hunting guides, their expertise unmatched in this field. Parties which embark with a Dune Goblin not only more consistently find hidden ruins, but they have a much higher chance of returning from their expedition alive. Outside of the Needle Sands, Dune Goblins develop thriving businesses as gardeners and farmers, capable of excavating soil at tremendous rates. As a Dune Goblin, your dense plates protect you from attacks, boosting your natural armor class. You can also shift your body to direct attacks towards your plated back, possibly negating incoming damage entirely. Finally, you can invoke the Great Spirit Ignolin and cast the spell Augury once per day. Not even the Titan trees thousands of feet high in the air can escape the influence of goblins. Swinging through the canopy layer, long-limbed ape-like tree goblins form packs of roaming hunters in search of nuts and bugs nestled away amongst the leaves. Their long tongues coated in slimy saliva dig for small insects buried in the bark. Tree goblins are thin and long, their backs sporting quill-like proto-feathers, with massive eyes giving these flighty goblins excellent sight among the trees, this often being their only defense against becoming a cloud giant's next meal. Due to the threat of cloud giants and other arboreal predators, tree goblins tend to stay close to established civilizations where these monsters are less frequent, feasting on naturally growing fruits and nuts on the outskirts of elven cities. Far too occasionally, curious tree goblins will enter the city to scavenge, swiping trinkets from trash, food from plates, and valuables from unsuspecting pockets. Working together, one tree goblin causes a distraction, while the others swipe what they can before making their escape, the bounty then shared in a hideout somewhere hidden in the leaves. Tree goblins like to adorn themselves in their new, sparkly belongings, for nothing more than simply enjoying them, and older, more experienced tree goblins will be covered head to toe in jewelry. In the elven cities, distance is often measured by lengths of a tree goblin's arm, and it's said that new mothers who receive a visit from a tree goblin during the night have given birth to a child who will grow up to be particularly wild. Never will you find a swifter messenger in the elven cities, with nobles generally having a few tree goblins in their stead, using their natural agility to deliver important information with urgency. Some tree goblins also travel the Titan trees in search of eggs from select insects to sell. When hatched and raised, The insects have a number of uses, from food to silk production to even transportation. As a tree goblin, you can use your extended reach to make melee attacks and interact with objects 5 feet further than you normally could. Additionally, you gain proficiency in 2 skills chosen from Deception, Perception, Performance, Sleight of Hand, or Stealth, and a climbing speed of 40 feet. Therenor's Shallows are home to another goblin, one wholly unique in their physiology. Tide goblins are common along the coastlines of Therenor's seas, hiding among forests of kelp and oyster beds in search of small fish and squid to catch. Lacking an internal skeletal structure, they have soft, squishy bodies, coated in a layer of mucus that protects their delicate skin from the sun and from parasites. They have excellent control of their form, bending and twisting into impossibly small spaces, even tensing the muscles in their legs to hobble around on land. Tide goblins ideally prefer to hang out in the water, finding bottles, jars, and other natural or man-made hiding spots to squeeze into during the night. While it's not ideal, multiple goblins may squeeze into one sleeping spot at a time, and tide goblins like to decorate the entrances of their homes with bright shells and shiny trinkets to show other goblins it's occupied. Early in the morning, as ships pass the shallows and pull into port, tide goblins will cling to their hulls, scaling the side of the vessel and hoisting themselves into the lower deck in search of food and valuables. Tide goblins will hide in all manner of crevices and containers to avoid detection, and unexpected hitchhikers are so common that some trade ships will task crew members to wait below deck on Goblin Watch, ready to intercept any stowaways. Other ships may even build shelves situated low to the floor, stacked high with shiny but ultimately worthless trinkets, expecting tide goblins to swipe these first. When cornered, a tide goblin can shift the pigment of their skin to produce bright, repeating patterns, disorienting and distracting those in front of them before they make a quick getaway. Like most goblins, tide goblins will devour just about anything that can fit in their mouths. This includes a very potent alchemical material which washes up on Therenor's shorelines during select times of the year, much to the dismay of the wizards and other spellcasters who have traveled many miles to harvest it. Fishermen also encounter tide goblins pretty commonly, who often steal bait off hooks and snap their lines while they're out. An old fisherman's tale says that the next fish after reeling up a tide goblin will be a personal best. Tide goblins in Smallfolk towns are excellent at managing pests and aquafarms, keeping the water clear of any animals that may try and consume their stock. Their ability to warp their form and squeeze through small cracks also make them fantastic for hands-on jobs in tight spaces, like chimney sweeps, rat catchers, plumbers, and locksmiths. It's rumored that port cities employ tide goblins as spies, having them sneak onto ambassador ships to listen in on important conversations. Tide goblins have also been known to work on and even command their own trading ships, having developed an eye for quality goods over the years. As a tide goblin, you'll be able to breathe in both air and in water, and you'll have a swim speed equal to your walk speed. You can also move through and stop in spaces large enough for a tiny-sized creature without squeezing. And you can squeeze yourself through spaces as narrow as an inch wide. Finally, your mesmerizing control over your skin grants you access to spells like Friends, Color Spray, and Enthrall. The youngest of Therenor's goblins, town goblins are spread far and wide throughout the realm, having developed much more human-esque features compared to Therenor's other goblinoids. Town goblins are far descendants of a group which have enmeshed themselves in Smallfolk society many generations ago, and can now be found in countless professions and trades, from carpentry to politics. Despite the name, not all town goblins reside in Smallfolk communities, just like how not all of Therenor's other goblins live in the wilds, nor are either goblin held in higher regard than the others. In Smallfolk societies, goblins have found ways to work around their ravenous appetites, taking half a dozen or so light breaks throughout the day to satiate their hunger. Pubs in small towns will see most of their afternoon business from goblins, and many larger cities are home to goblin-owned taverns and eateries, which serve food at all hours of the day. Many town goblins in Therenor are adventurers, traveling from region to region, aspiring to do good and make a name for themselves as heroes of the realm. Therenor's town goblins use the same rules as the goblins from the Forgotten Realms. And that's Goblins in Therenor. Lee and I spent a lot of time trying to create a wide range of fun and interesting goblin designs to further flesh out the realm, and we're really happy with how it turned out. Storm Giants will be our next video, and that will definitely be coming soon. I would also like to take this time to announce the winners of our Discord server's art and writing contests. We were absolutely blown away by the creativity on display, and we couldn't be happier with the wonderful group of artists and world builders we've assembled. So congratulations to Just Ozzy and Domatoro, our winners for the artist and writing contests, as well as the runner-ups Garlic Noodle, Joey K, Lucas 2, Willow, Ravensland, Thaumaturge, Double E Battery, and Cloudy. Everyone who submitted work into this contest is truly spectacular, and Lee and I can't thank you enough for really making Therenor feel alive. We'll see you next time.